You may have noticed that I have two versions of my review of Star Wars: The Clone Wars. This is because the original video was taken off by Warner Brothers. If you are in the UK, then you will not be able to watch the original video due to copyright issues. That is why I made another version of the video with the same audio. In my previous videos I reviewed the main 6 films in the Star Wars franchise. In this video I will review Star Wars: The Clone Wars. As the Clone Wars sweep through the galaxy, the heroic Jedi Knights struggle to maintain order and restore peace. More and more systems are falling prey to the forces of the dark side as the Galactic Republic slips further and further under the sway of the Separatists and their never-ending droid army. Anakin Skywalker and his Padawan learner Ahsoka Tano find themselves on a mission with far-reaching consequences, one that brings them face to face with crime lord Jabba the Hutt. But Count Dooku and his sinister agents, including the nefarious Asajj Ventress, will stop at nothing to ensure that Anakin and Ahsoka fail at their quest. Meanwhile, on the front lines of the Clone Wars, Obi-Wan Kenobi and Master Yoda lead a massive clone army in a valiant effort to resist the forces of the dark side. As anyone who is familiar with the Star Wars franchise will know, the Clone War takes place between episodes 2 and 3. This leaves a big gap between the two films. Star Wars: The Clone Wars was made to bridge that gap, and I think that the makers of this film succeeded in doing so. The Clone Wars movie has got a lot of bad reviews since its release, but if you look closer there is much more to this film than first meets the eye. The Clone Wars is a very well done piece of animation. In fact, it is probably one of the best looking films of 2008. The characters are made to look and act just as they did in the main 6 films, and with this standard of animation they can achieve much more than with live action. For example, they can add all kinds of different creatures and effects in here without having to spend so much money, and all these things fit in much better than they would in the live action films. The new locations like the crystalline planet of Christophsis are beautifully designed and presented on screen, and familiar locations like Jabba's palace on Tatooine are kept just how they were in the other films. This makes the film look enough like the other films to be part of the series, but also different enough to stand out from the rest. The story is surprisingly imaginative and the plot takes various different twists and turns. New characters are introduced like Captain Rex and Ahsoka Tano, who each bring something new to the film. The Clone Wars explored in much more detail, and as opposed to in episodes 2 and 3, the clones have their own identities, which makes them much more likable and different. The relationship between Anakin Skywalker and Ahsoka Tano is very interesting to watch because they are such similar people who share such different views. Training Ahsoka makes Anakin into a more mature and responsible person as the film progresses, and explains why Anakin is much more adult in episode 3. Although there has been a lot of Star Wars media based on the Clone Wars, it is always better to see the Clone Wars on the big screen rather than read it in a comic book or watch it on television, making the Clone Wars much more exciting. I think Star Wars: The Clone Wars was made not only as a great way of getting the younger generation excited about Star Wars, it is also something that the older Star Wars fans will enjoy, and that is what makes this movie a must for any fan of the series. If you don't like Star Wars, then this is definitely not for you, but for any fan of the series I strongly recommend buying this on DVD.